What's up, Warriors, and welcome to a brand new season of the Mental Health Movement podcast, Voice for the Voiceless. I am your host, Chris. I hope everybody's staying warm up in the northern states. I know a bunch of my friends are kind of stuck in a storm right now, so I hope you guys are staying safe. Um, Thank you guys so much for these last two seasons. I've met a lot of really cool people and have been on a couple podcasts myself with those same people. Have made a lot of really cool connections, and your support this last year, and going into the new year, um, eternally grateful for. So thank you guys so much again for being on this journey with me. Your support means a lot to me. Um, so today's guest, we have he has been a warrior for a good portion of his journey, 15 years struggling with addiction, and basically created his own platform to try and spread the message of positivity, break that stigma in our community. He has his own podcast called the Blaklist Podcast, and highly recommend you guys follow that because he is a incredible human being, fellow warrior, and a brother. Please help me welcome Jared. Jared, how you doing, buddy?
What is going on, brother?
How you doing?
Good,
Staying
good.
warm?
Staying warm, yes. Staying warm. Today's been a little cold outside, but
Yeah.
staying warm definitely.
I wanted to ask you something before we kind of dove into your journey. What made you want to move to New York from Arizona?
Believe it or not, Brianna, she's the one that you know, we met during through my podcast,
Right.
um, through a mutual guest, and then so she's in New York, I'm on the West Coast, and we just started dating and started visiting back and forth. And the plan was always to move out here, but it just the timing was always more like, I need a job and this and that. And then I wrecked my motorcycle last January. And I broke my knee and I was out of work and I was just I was sitting at home and I'm like, well, I guess it's now or never. So
Right.
let's do it. So yeah, and here I am almost a year later. So
Shit, I'm glad it was just a broken knee and not anything worse, man. I mean, broken knee's pretty bad, but
yeah. Well, that was my second one. My first one, I was 16, and I had broken both arms, my collarbone, my pelvis. I was in a
Jesus.
wheelchair for 3 months. Like it was bad. So
Yeah,
thank
that's
God this
horrible.
time it was just my knee. And believe it or not, like I sat on my bike exactly a month after my accident and my surgery, and I was able to sit on it. I couldn't really ride it, but I was able to
Right.
I was like, watch, I'm gonna sit on this thing just to prove to everybody that I can do it.
And
And
this
then
is
I
after your
walked.
first wreck?
Yeah, no, this last
Oh,
one.
the second one.
Yeah, no, the first one, dude, I was out for 3 months. I couldn't.
Right,
I was
right.
no. But yeah, so I walked with the cane for like I don't know, good 3 or 4 months, and then now it's like it's never happened. So
Right. Do you ride up there too in New York?
yeah, yeah, I
Yeah.
actually rode my the same bike I wrecked in Arizona. I went back in June of this past summer, and I rode it 2,500 miles from Phoenix to New York.
That must have
Um,
been a nice ride though.
Uh, if it wasn't raining, like it took me four
Ah,
days, and like 2.5 of the days were rain, and I was just getting
of
dumped
course.
on. I was so
Jeez.
mad. I was so mad. I'd call her from the hotels, and I would take my shoes off and just dump the water out. I was so mad, but it was good, But for me, like that's my therapy. Like that
Yeah,
that writing is like for my anxiety. Like I love it. So yeah, I brought it out here, and yep, I still write. Well, of course not right now, but I just put it
right.
in storage a few weeks ago, and waiting until hopefully as soon as possible, we can pull it out and start writing again.
It's interesting that you brought up that it's your therapy and it helps your anxiety a lot, especially after those accidents. Like, I would think that would do the opposite to somebody. So, I mean, it's great to see
Yeah,
that you didn't let that obstacle of getting hurt deter you away from
yeah,
still wanting to ride.
yeah. Because I mean, it's like now to everybody else, they're just like, I hope you never get on a bike again. But for me, it was more of like, if I allow something to, make me so terrified that I can't, I'm never going to be able to enjoy it. None of that. And it's like, why? Why? Because it's just like driving a car. If you get into a car accident, like, yes, I get they have traumatic experiences and some people don't want to drive, but it's like, why am I going to let an accident that's the risk I take when I ride. Um,
Right.
why am I going to let that, mess up like my whole, like, cause I love riding. I've ridden since as long as I can remember. And for me, like if I go out and I'm having really bad anxiety or bad mental health day or something, did I get on my bike and I ride? And
Right.
so I was gonna be damned if it was gonna keep me down. If anything, yes, it made me be a little more aware. But it didn't scare me. I just was more
Yeah.
aware. I just had to realize, okay, you know what? There's people out there that I have to basically ride like everyone else trying to kill me. And that's
Right.
unfortunately the mentality as a biker that you have to have is that
You
everybody's
absolutely
out
have
to
to.
kill
Right.
you. Um, and I ride smart. I don't ride,
Mhm.
don't ride stupid. Like, yeah, I ride a street bike. There's times you go fast, all kinds of stuff. That's cool with that. But it's about riding smart as well and being safe and this, that, and the third. So like I take that into consideration after the accidents, but I'm not like, nope, I'm never getting on a bike ever again.
Right. Right. Was it your parents or a good friend that got you into writing?
Um, yeah, it was just kind of like a little bit like both, like growing up, my stepdad at the time, the one that my mom was with, had a motorcycle and I started riding on the back of that and then just cruising and whatnot. And then of course I always grew up with like quads and dirt bikes and stuff. And so for me, I've just kind of like always been around it, whether it's on the street or on the dirt. But I love it. It's for me. And then when I moved out here, I was always rode by myself. I never, ever, ever had a passenger. And then I got Brianna to start riding with me, and we like that's what we do. Like every weekend, we would ride. We started a motorcycle group in Buffalo. And
Nice.
so because where we're at, there's hardly anybody that rides. So we started a group there, and we have like about 60 members, but we have like a good core
Wow.
group, of people, and we ride every single weekend. We go out, we do long runs, we do short runs, and that's like her and I to be able to, spend time to do that together is really awesome as well.
Do you guys have like a meeting place that the club goes to?
So yes and no. So we're hoping to change that this season. So we have like a meetup spot, which is just in a parking lot of an advanced auto part. Like
Right.
that's our meetup spot, but we don't have like a clubhouse for say. So we're hoping that this year we can, maybe figure out what we can do. So a lot of us met through another group that was in Buffalo. Like there was another group that had a clubhouse, and they had like 300 or 400 members, but mind you, 90% of those people never showed up. They were just on a
Oh,
Facebook group.
right.
But he had a clubhouse, and when we went, like just a lot of our views didn't line up with his, and he's a good guy, he's a great guy. Just our writing styles were different, and a lot of
Hmm.
people recognize that. So then me and a buddy were like, well, let's go start this group. Like we're not taking anything away from this group here, but let's go do ours. Let's kind of be a little bit more focused on how we like to ride and different things like that. And it just happened that just a lot of people felt the same way, and a lot of people gravitated over to that. Um, so, it's like I wish we could have a clubhouse, but I don't know,
Right.
unless we find somebody's house to meet at, but I don't
Right.
know. I don't know.
It's
We got to get like a
interesting.
warehouse.
Yeah. It's interesting that you brought up that you were in a group before, and your views or whatever or writing style didn't line up with the other person. I always find it interesting, no matter what kind of group it is, whether it's a biking group like yours or a mental health group like mine, and you find that cluster of people that gravitate and contribute and stuff, and then you have all those people who are just in the group to be in the group, but nothing more. Um, I was in a mental health group before the one I created, and it was Suicide Prevention Rocks. And they asked me to be on a to start contributing to a blog, and it was for a suicide foundation. This guy lost his husband to suicide and everything, and I started doing a blog. So I published the first one, and they shared it to their group or whatever, and it barely got any attention, like, all my regular public posts in the group was. So my immediate thought was, they're trying to either suppress me to where I'm not getting attention like I was before, or I don't know what's going on. I kind of felt like I was being filtered out of their group indirectly. So when I created my own mental health group, they kicked me out of doing the blog, and they kicked me out of the mental health group because of doing that. And I remember having a conversation with one of the admins. They asked me if I made another group. I'm like, yeah, I mean, you guys aren't publishing any of the blogs I'm writing. Like, I spent 5 hours on a blog they never published. And I was upset. I'm like, it's 5 hours out of my day. I don't mind doing it, but it's not the point.
Right.
Um, and then I remember saying to him, like, aren't we in this doing the same exact thing? It's kind of like with your biker club. Aren't we all trying to have fun and trying to,
Mm.
get together and go for rides and stuff, but different styles, different beliefs. It's always interesting to see how that affects every level of like the social
Right.
status.
And not everybody reacts the same either. Like, like for instance, they should have never like kicked you out because of that. Like this guy, when we did this, we had like no ill intentions. It wasn't like, we're taking no, it was just this is what we're doing. And he's the one that took offense to it. And we were friends on Facebook, and he went and he deleted us up, me and the other people off Facebook. And I'm just like, bro, like we're just we can it's just like in our recovery, like I said, in mental health and all that, like we can have different views, different opinions, but still coexist and be friends. Like, what's the problem? And so,
Right.
same thing with you. I don't get, it's like, why? It's like, why did they feel the need to do that? Like, did they feel like it was competition? Like, what? But at the end of the day, like,
That's what I'm saying. Like
I don't think
weird
there is any,
competition.
there's no competition in this thing. Like,
Yeah.
all we're doing at the end of the day, man, my podcast, your podcast, everybody's podcast, anybody that's out there that's doing it for mental health and recovery, we're all trying to do the same thing.
Right.
So how am I going to get pissed off at somebody else because they're doing the same thing I'm doing? Like, man, do you know how many mental health podcasts are out there?
Yeah.
Hundreds and hundreds. So
Yeah.
we're doing the same thing. So the way I look at it is the more the merrier, more power to it. Great.
Right.
Because it means there's more resources for people to be able to get. So I don't get it. I really don't understand why people they take it as a threat, and they feel it
Yeah.
just because like you don't 100% line up with their thoughts, and then you do something for yourself that you believe in, doesn't mean that you're not valuing them as a person or anything, or you're not valuing their beliefs, but it just doesn't work for you. Same thing going
Right.
back to like in our recovery and in our with with the way that we recover, whether some people are abstinent, some people are not, some people are plant, but it's just everything. But it's like we can have the difference in opinion and recover
Right.
differently and still be on the same page.
Yeah. And you can kind of use that with trauma too, because for some reason, people in this community like to compare traumas with each other.
Yeah.
Like I have a broken leg, you have a sprained ankle. Oh, my leg is more hurt than yours, so I have more pain than you. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm sorry you got hurt. Like that's how that conversation should go. It shouldn't be, oh, well, at least it's not broken, and I feel as a whole, this community as a whole, there are so many people to dismiss other people's struggles because they're not going through what that person is going through. Like, abuse is abuse regardless of what level it is, right?
Mm.
And a breakup and divorce, they're both traumatic in their own ways, right? And for some reason, I don't know why people feel the need to compare and compete with stuff like that. Because like you said with the group thing, we're all here to break a stigma. We're all here to talk about mental health. So why is it a problem if somebody else is creating another platform to try and add to that message?
Mhm. Yeah, it doesn't mean that you're any better than they are, or
Right.
vice versa.
Yeah.
Just means that you might be able to bring something to the table that they don't see, or that they don't line up with, and they're going to be able to bring something to the table that you can't. And
Yeah.
so, at the end of the day, it's not saying that you're better than anybody else. So it's just, I think, people, unfortunately, these days, they get their feelings hurt too quick.
Yeah.
And that's just what they do. They get hurt and they get their feelings hurt, and then they play the victim, and
Oh
next thing
yeah.
you know, and it's like learning how to navigate that, in our mental health and whatnot, because there's a lot of it out there, unfortunately.
Yeah. So let's dig a little bit into your story, into your journey here. So you had mentioned that you were struggling with addiction for 15 years, I believe you said, right? What was the breaking point for you, and when did you find it was time to get help for yourself?
Yeah, so essentially, I dealt with for 15 years on and off, and of course, why do we start using trauma, just different things as a child. And so for me, it was just I went majority um of my addiction, like, had it all together. Literally, I had it all together. Nobody knew I was using nothing. And it was just finally about the last year I started kind of getting really sloppy. I started just when that's when I got really once I basically got over to the fentanyl, like that's when it got bad. Before it was just opiates and I was able to just handle it with no problem. But I think the moment was, like once I realized I got into some trouble with some people. I'm trying to watch my terminology now on
Yeah,
how I say things, but I got in with a group of people that I shouldn't have got in with, and I did um some things I never thought that I would end up doing, and it was more of like wrong time, wrong place type stuff, being forced to do things that I didn't want to do, just because I was present and I saw things. And if anyone knows about, that type of world, it's just you don't say no. You can't say no.
right,
And so it was more of like, once I saw a couple things that I was like, whoa, like I'm next type deal, and then I started like pawning all my stuff, signing over titles to like my motorcycles and vehicles, because I was in debt. And I was just so low, and it was just like, I gotta stop it, because um I would be dead. I literally would be dead, and it wasn't because of the drugs. A
right,
100%. Like that's what it came down to. Like, okay, yes, let's be honest with you. Yes, I could have been dead because of the drugs, but I knew 100% that if I did not get out of that life, I was going to be dead because of the hands of somebody else. And
right,
I just it so it scared the crap out of me. It really did. And just like just something that I never really experienced before in my entire life. Like, I grew up seeing a lot of stuff, but it was normal for me. But some of the things that happened, I was just like, whoa. Like,
right,
yeah, I don't want nothing to do with that. And it's like, you ain't got a choice, blah, blah, blah. So I just decided, you know what? I'm going to sell everything that I owned. I told my ex-wife, that I had an issue, and we just sold everything that we owned, and we moved 1,100 miles away to Texas and start over. And that's what I did.
right. So did you go to like NA or anything like that? Like, did you go to like any recovery programs, or how did that journey
Yeah. So
look for you?
I detoxed at home. I never went to I never went to treatment or to a facility or anything. Like, I detoxed at home. I did do some therapy, like some outpatient therapy, in the very beginning. They were trying to get me on like methadone and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I considered it. I was getting ready to go through with it just because I wasn't sure, how my recovery was going to be, especially because I tried so many times to get off. And then I changed my mind at the last minute. And I was like, yeah, I'm not going to do the whole methadone Suboxone route. And so it was more, and so for me, I changed. I went to Kratom. Like, Kratom is what helped is what has helped me in my personal recovery. But I didn't do NA. I didn't do AA. I don't. Again, I respect those programs. They just didn't work for me personally. I went to Celebrate Recovery a lot, and if anyone's listening doesn't know what Celebrate Recovery is, it's a 12-step group, but it's more of a faith based. They hold at churches and whatnot. And so for me, like, that was just more comfortable for me to do. Like, that's what I did in the very beginning, and that really helped me a lot in my recovery.
Right. So from like personal experience, I have attended NA meetings with my mom, who was, struggling with her addiction. Um, I always found like there was more people that were trying to pull others under with them than there were people trying to get better. Of course, there were, the sobriety veterans that were sober 15, 20, 30 years, and that's great that those people are there, but I always felt like, a lot of the people that were there for a month or 2 months just kind of always, and I know addiction is super hard to defeat. And I do understand and appreciate that struggle because it's one of those things that will humble you really fast, even if if it's not by force, it's over time. And over time, of course, addiction can get worse, right? Um, but I always found it did the opposite for my mom because, she went to NA meetings, but then she wouldn't be clean like a month later. And it's just like, okay, so you're either going there to meet new people to fall back into that hole, or you're trying
Yeah.
to get better. Um, so it's always interesting to hear other perspectives on the NAAA perspective for people who are struggling with sobriety because I feel more or less I hear the same sentiment of, it's not for me, it doesn't, it hasn't worked for me. You mentioned outpatient therapy.
Yeah.
How did that work for you? Did you like outpatient therapy? Because my experience with outpatient therapy was awful.
I didn't do it that long, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
But like I didn't do it that long. I just went while I was like in the process. Like I was thinking it was like 4 or 5 days after I had detoxed off of fentanyl, is when like I went in and just because people were like, go get some therapy, blah blah blah. And that's when they were like trying to put me on, the Suboxone and stuff and the methadone. But I I went to a couple of meetings, but I only went just because I was trying to get like an initial assessment done, just trying to
right,
figure out. And I just never, fell. And and that was the other thing was I didn't stay on it too because I did all that right before we had moved to
mm,
Texas. So I did everything while I was in Phoenix. So I didn't commit to anything because of I was moving.
makes
Um,
sense.
but really quick to go back really quick to the NA thing and so for me, I'll just be honest with you why it didn't work for me is because I had mentioned like I mentioned earlier, I transitioned to taking kratom. People know what kratom is, some people don't, but it's a herbal powder supplement, and it's it could be considered, on like the MAT spectrum as well. And AA and NA, they believe, that you have to be like 100% abstinence is the way. And if you're not 100% abstinence, then you're not sober. And that just didn't work for me because I am on something that was helping me and it was helping me in my transition into my recovery. And it just seems like I got crapped on every single time. So I just couldn't do it because I just felt like it was like almost a little hypocritical.
Right.
And so again, I'm not knocking the program and I'm not
Yeah.
knocking the people. Listen, if you can do sobriety 100% abstinent, more power to you. Okay. I wish I could. I'll be straight with you. I 100% wish I could, but I couldn't at that time. And so for me, just instead of like them respecting, why and where I was at in my recovery, especially being so early on in my recovery, it was more like I just got hammered about it because I was taking kratom, and it just really turned me off. But when I went to celebrate recovery, one, faith based, so there's not going to be a lot of judgment there. But two, there it's for every hurt, habit, and hang up. It wasn't just strictly for chemical. You had
Right.
everything, whether it's from sexual to trauma to food, gambling, you name it. And they were a lot more understanding on how recovery works for people and
Mm,
addictions and all that because and again, and it wasn't all from a chemical standpoint. So
right.
and I was straight up with them, and they knew, and it was just more of like I was just accepted, which is why I gravitated to CR more than anything.
Right. For me personally, I think what would make those programs a lot better for people is if they had professionals sit in on those meetings. Again, it's great having the sobriety veterans, 30, 40 years sober. That's awesome. But like you said, there's judgment there. There's, oh, well, you're on something, so you're not sober. And I definitely always felt like there was that judgment walking in the doors with my mom, like, listening to her talk and listening to everybody else talk. And again, not knocking people who struggle with addiction because I know it's hard. But those programs, I feel the judgment part. I feel like would make somebody relapse before it would, chase somebody to be sober. Because,
Mm.
somebody sitting there telling you, oh, well, you're trying to get sober, but you're taking something, like you said, you said you were on Kratom, right?
Yeah.
Um, and just something as minute as that to try and get yourself through what you were struggling with, just to
Yeah.
receive judgment from a program
Yeah.
that's supposed to help people. Um,
Yeah,
it's
because
it
you're already struggling as it is. Okay.
right,
You know, anybody that's gone through addiction already knows how hard that it is just to even get to that point.
yeah,
So then the last thing that you want to hear when you walk into one of those meetings, truly seeking help, and just wanting to, truly better yourself, is that, well, it doesn't matter, no, it doesn't matter what you're doing because you're not sober, it's not working. Like, who who are you to tell me
exactly.
in my own personal recovery like, that's just the way that I look at it. And so if you're an addict and you're over there trying to better your life, like, you don't want to go in there and have somebody sit there and talk down to you about that. Like, wow, like, I sure came here for nothing, and that's just how I
Right.
felt personally.
And I've gone to people's houses that where they were like throwing one of those meetings, like parties at their house, obviously no drugs or alcohol or anything like that, but like those conversations that are held in those meetings seem like the opposite at those parties. Like, oh, that judgment is right back there because it's at a party, it's not at a meeting, quote unquote. And I've always got a really bad vibe off of a lot of people that my mom associated herself with because of that reason. And I just feel like those meetings are just kind of like you've seen the movie Fight Club, right?
Mm-hmm.
Remember when he said his name is Robert Paulson and they all start repeating him as like his name was Robert Paulson?
Yeah.
That's how I feel like meetings are sometimes.
Yeah.
Like they're just reverberating everything that they're hearing
Yep.
and not doing the actual work to overcome that addiction.
Right. Yeah. They're just yes men, and
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's
it,
probably the best
it,
way I could describe it.
and they're just they're just saying it just because everybody else is saying it, and
Yeah,
and they don't want to, like, be the ones to be on the sideline there. But then it's like, okay, saying it and doing it are two different things.
exactly.
So how many people are actually, doing it? And at the end of the day too, like, you made a good point before, like you said, when you went with your mom, like, on people, a lot of times, and it is unfortunate, it is sad that this happens, but a lot of times people go to those meetings just so they can target people,
Yeah,
just to be able to get them to, pull them off to the side and start using again. And that's something for me too. I was just like, nah, like, I can't, I don't, I can't see that. I don't, no, I don't want to be part of it. Nothing that does
right.
that, because
Because there's
it
some
does happen,
people,
unfortunately.
right, and there's some people in there that are court ordered to go to those meetings that
And
might not necessarily want to get better.
nope. And so if they find somebody, they start vibing with somebody in there that, they think they're doing the same thing. Oh, well, hey, let's go do this in the back, blah, blah, blah. And it's just, I don't know. Again, I think the program is great for the people it works for. And I think the overall, just the steps and all that, 100%.
Yeah,
But, and this goes back to my personal, again, everything that I try to say is opinions, is based on me personally,
sure.
because I don't want people, unfortunately, people, they get upset even if you say, it works for them, but it doesn't work for me. They're going to take it out of context and they're going to blow this
Absolutely.
whole thing up. So I have to always reiterate, this is my personal opinion on how it worked for me, so that they don't take that and they blow that up into a million pieces. And so, oh, he's talking bad about NA and AA. And I'm like, no, not at all. Like, if I could be one of those 100% abstinence people, like, 100%, it's not the way my brain operates.
Right. If you don't mind me asking, how long have you been sober now?
So I hit, October 16th was 5 years.
Nice.
So
Congratulations, man.
thank you.
That's
And
awesome.
I tell you, I'd never thought that it would happen.
Yeah,
Especially with right towards the end when I was really bad.
right.
I just, wow, like, it amazes me at times when I sit here and I'm just thinking, and I'm like, like I'm here, I'm alive, I'm breathing. I got my girlfriend, I got my kids, and I got this podcast, and it's just doing all these amazing things in life, and none of this would have been happening if it wasn't for recovery,
Right.
because I wouldn't be here.
Right. For you personally, when did you start like noticing like that difference in the way you think, in the way that you operate day to day, when you were becoming sober? Like, does it hit like right where you're at a year, or does it wait 2 years, or how did that work for
Um,
you?
I would probably say within 2 years,
Yeah.
because when I moved away, I didn't go back home for 2 years,
Hmm.
because I didn't know how my brain was gonna, operate when I went back home. Again, people, places, things. So I did, and me being born and raised in Phoenix, and that city's, population of 4 or 5 million people. Like, I know that city like the back of my hand. I know every single point, just and if you want, and if I was like, and if I wanted to use, like, I know 100% where to go. It doesn't matter what side of the city
Right.
that you're on. So for me, it was, how is my mind gonna, when I get back, like if I'm passing, a old place where a plug lives at, or where I used to do this and do that, and I just wasn't sure. And so, and I honestly, to be straight with you too, I wasn't sure if I was 100% disciplined enough to be able to, because that's the other thing, man. When you get in, yeah, you can get sober, but you got to work these steps. You got to work different things, because you got to build that discipline up.
Right.
Because you don't want to jump too fast, too quick, too fast, um, in your recovery, because then what happens is you don't have that spiritual and physical and mental, all that. You don't have that discipline enough in your body. So the minute that you get a chance to slip, like, it's a 50-50 shot. So for me, I was just protecting myself 100%.
Sure.
And I waited till 2 years, and I went home at 2 years, and then I realized, like, I got this. Like, I can do this. I wasn't triggered. Like, I wasn't worried about anything, like nothing. And I think it was like probably, yeah, that's 2 year mark where I realized, like, okay, I can live this life, and I can do this, and I can do that, and I don't have to, worry. But it was me really more was just protecting myself,
Yeah.
because I wanted to make sure that I was good,
Yeah.
because I didn't want to go home and throw all that down the drain.
And you mentioned two key words there, triggers and discipline. A lot of people underestimate how heavy those triggers can punch you in the face. For me, my trigger is my mom. Unfortunately, she, like we talked
Yeah,
about in your podcast, her and I have a non-existent relationship now, and certain conversations now, it's just kind of like takes me back to when I was a kid listening to her try to gaslight me and all that stuff and say that none of this happened, or if I said something I didn't mean it, kind of thing.
yeah,
And now that I've been in therapy almost 4 years now, I can differentiate like tones in her voice and how she talks to me about things. Like, I had her stay at my house for a week when she visited Florida last time, and everybody thought I was crazy. I'm like, honestly, it wasn't that bad because I had a therapy session right before, just to make sure that I was ready for that. And I was stern on my boundaries. She didn't push. She tried a couple times, but I didn't let her through. So for me, that discipline was super important, because
hmm,
if I reacted the way that she wanted me to react, I would go right back to step one when I started therapy. I
right,
would be her puppet to manipulate. You know what I mean?
yeah. Yeah,
So
people don't get that. They don't
yeah,
understand the power of how that is. And,
right,
and that goes the bit, the same with whether it's a mental health aspect or whether it's an addictions. Like, I tell people all the time, listen, people tell me, they ask me all the time, like, hey man, how can I do what you do? Like, I want to help people. I want to go to the streets. I want to help addicts. I want to help, do this, that, and the third. And I tell them, make sure you got about, at least, this is my personal opinion, that I'd say, get 6 months to a year of sobriety under your belt and discipline under your belt, because I see it. This has actually happened to a couple of close friends of mine. They have the best intentions and the purest of hearts, and they just got sober maybe 2 3 months in, and they want to start, going down and truly helping other addicts, but they don't have their triggers under control, and this, that, and the third. And so they jump full force, because when we do this, we're around people that are actively using. And so, and I've seen them, they go there and they have full intentions of helping, but they're not disciplined enough. They get triggered and then they fall and then they just slowly start backpedaling. And so that's why I say, don't jump in too quick, too fast, because you want to make sure that you personally are solid. When somebody goes out and if you're going and somebody pulls out and they start, using in front of you or something, you got to make sure that 100% you're solid. And if you're not, like you're just gonna fold. And so it's all about your triggers, triggers and discipline. Like those are the top two things, I tell you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And uh perfect segue into my second question. When when did you create your platform, and what, I guess, is your long-term goal, if you have one, for your current platform?
Yeah. So I about a year into my recovery is when I had thought about the idea. I've always been like YouTube podcast guy. Like I love watching YouTube and different podcasts and whatnot. And at that time, there wasn't as many platforms, especially recovery mental health based like there is now. And I was like, it would be really cool to just share my story and help others, share their story and just show people like, there's a different way of life. And so I thought about it. I played around with different ideas for the next 2 years. I did. I literally 2 years I sat on it, making up excuses. I'm like, I got to do this and I got to do that. And it finally was 2022. January 2022. I was like, now or never. Like I got to do something. So I made the page. I came up with the name, the Blaklist Podcast, and I came up with the Blacklist was because, we're talking about topics that are controversial topics that society doesn't want us to talk about, things that are blacklisted, you name it, and we're trying to like defy these blacklisted items and different things. And so, um, I just jumped full. I no clue what I was doing, but I did it. I jumped in. I did a few episodes, but I really just like I was testing the waters. I wasn't sure. So I majority of 2022 was trial and error.
Yeah,
Um, what works, what doesn't. There wasn't a lot of like episodes that was published. A lot of it was all live, Facebook lives and all that. That's a lot what we did. 2023 though, when I moved out here, full force, 100%, boom. We jumped in, got a team together, literally took this to the next level. I started just knocking out content. And so luckily we just finished up all last year and it was an amazing year. Uh it was awesome. It was
yeah,
awesome. And it was more than what I expected to happen. But so the long-term goal for it, honestly, is more than a podcast. So my goal by the end of this year, what happened here? Did I lose you? Oh, hold on. My
no, I'm
screen
here.
went. Okay. Um, my goal by the end of this year is to have a full forced 501(c)(3) nonprofit. I want to be able to have um, resources for people. I want to be able to go out, to go travel, to speak at different events, just to do different things and whatnot. And so the podcast is just like one aspect of that,
Yeah,
but that's the long-term goal. Long-term goal is to scale this to the next level. Like, yes, of course, I want to blow the podcast up. I want to.
sure.
Last year was getting established. This year is now scaling to the next level. Branding. That's really what I'm focusing on this year. So if I can focus on branding and whatnot, 100%. That's the plan this year. And then now, kind of going and moving into like the nonprofit because we want to be able to. We spoke before. We want to be able to travel to these recovery events, speak, share stories, have a booth. And that's kind of like what we're doing.
Yeah, and one goal for me this year is to have a do a public speaking event, because I feel having this platform has been the greatest thing that I think personally I've ever done as well. And 2022 is when I started my podcast and didn't have a direction. It was more, I started it because my brother passed away, and I know he was really backing the mental health group, and I knew after he passed away that I needed to make it more than what it was. Last year, I had a tremendous amount of guests. I think I ended up with 51 total episodes between season 1 and 2.
Okay.
And this year, I definitely want to, like you said, make it a brand, make it something that people are going to, oh wow, this is really good, or I want this guy on my podcast. Like those last 3 podcasts I had in December were so great for me because when I was on your podcast or when I was on Ann's or when I was on Jada's, I got to tell different pieces of my story that I never thought I'd be able to share,
Yeah.
and being on your podcast was a great opportunity for me as well because when people hear um other people's struggles and they know they're not alone. And like you said, man, there's a lot. And it's interesting that there's a lot of blacklisted topics in the mental health community. And number one, for whatever reason, is men's mental health,
Yeah.
and um, while that's a lot of my focus on my podcast, I like to have perspectives from both sides because, sometimes there are women that advocate for us and, they get a lot of flack for it. Um, and then you have guys like us who try to advocate for everybody, and we still get dumped on. Um, so I genuinely do appreciate people like yourself and others for having a platform, for being able to hold that space for people like myself. So thank you again for letting me be on your podcast.
Yeah, no, I'm excited, and your episode should be dropping next month, and well, in February. I'm not sure when this is going to drop, but I'm looking forward to having it, drop, and just being able to, be on yours, and be able to collaborate, and this year we're going to do a lot of good stuff this year. A lot of
Yeah,
the people that I've met through this podcast, and Sean, and Chuck, and just all these people that become really good friends of mine, and we're doing the dang thing this year. That's what
yeah,
I'm looking forward to, honestly.
absolutely, man. What has been the hardest part in creating content, and what do you feel has been the biggest challenge?
Um, Man, the hardest part, I'm gonna tell you, like for me, it's all the technical stuff. Like so the hardest part and the biggest challenge I'm gonna tell you is kind of combined into one. Um, Guests, zero problems. Of
Right.
course, we're backed up with guests. Recording all that content, that's all great. It's all the technical stuff, it's the small stuff that no one thinks about. Okay, how to title an episode, the thumbnails, the editing. Because I do that. I do all of that. I do the editing and the thumbnails and the titling and this, that, and the third. And it's always like, okay, what's going to catch the eye to a viewer, and this, that, and the third. And so for me, it's all the technical aspects of it. I'm really trying to really just learn how to um just, like I said, scale this to the next level. I mean, I'm talking to some other, people, podcasters that have, a couple 100,000 subscribers and stuff like that. I mean, of course, they're in the game, they know what they're doing, and they're kind of giving me advice on, like, okay, this is what you need to do when it comes to a thumbnail, when it comes to this and that. It's so um I've been grateful to not really have to worry about, guests and content and whatnot. Like that's a never ending thing, but it's more of just like time. Okay, I would say a challenge is time management because
Right.
I have so much to do and so little time. We record 4 times a week. We drop 2 episodes a week, Mondays and Fridays. So that means I'm editing 2 episodes a week. And my editing it's not just record and throw it up. Like if you've ever went back and looked at our very first episodes and watched as we grow, the transition is just, you see, between the camera angles, between this, between that, like it's a whole science in itself, and it always changes. And it's just always learning, okay, what's the next best thing? What can we do what can we do now? All right, these last 5 or 6 episodes we did like this. All right, what can we do? But then it's also keeping the same consistency, because everybody knows consistency is key, but the audience is always, they're expecting the same consistent thing. So when you're constantly changing up the ideas, it kind of throws a little wrench in there, but it's like you're trying to find the right idea and the right thing that works. And it's hard. So being able to,
Yeah.
like, time management, all that, it's hard.
Yeah, I
Because then I
definitely
work a full-time job as well.
Yeah, same. Sometimes I'll have guests that can only do weekdays, and it's like, man, I work until 6 o'clock, so
Mm.
kind of like, okay, I haven't eaten dinner yet, but I got to record
Yep.
at 7 o'clock, and it's just like
Yep.
time management sometimes is the hardest possible freaking thing, and
Yep.
my meat and potatoes of the podcast is audio. Spotify and iTunes is basically where most of my viewership comes from.
Okay.
Um, and you and I talked about how hard it is to get YouTube
Yeah.
viewership unless you're like investing in it. And I think that has been one of the biggest challenges for myself because I literally upload and schedule. That's what I do for YouTube because there's a lot in YouTube that I
Yeah.
just don't have the time to learn. Um, but like I said, this year it's all about wanting to make a bigger impact than I made last year, and I feel that a lot of my podcasts last year. I mean, I think I hit my 15th country, I believe, last year. So I
Awesome.
mean, we're making a difference, man, and I feel us leaning on each other definitely helps that us spread that message a lot.
Mm. Yeah, exactly. And again, like we're not in competition with each other. And so it's like, we might as well join forces and be able to just hit as much as we can. And, if I have a trouble, man, I'm always reaching out to other podcasters. If I have a problem, like I'm reaching out like, hey man, like you ever run into this, what do you think about this, that, and the third, and vice versa, that bounce back off of me. So I'll never be ashamed to just reach out to somebody and be like, listen, like if I think you can do something better than me, I'm going to reach out to you and I'm going to ask you your opinion because I value that. It's not, I'm not just, oh, he knows more than me, I'm not going to mess with him. Like, no, that's not even the case. Like, why?
Right. Have you ever felt yourself being intimidated at all by a guest?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Like, especially like, so it's funny, bro. I'll tell you, like, sometimes I can have a guest on and, bro, we will just flow perfect. No issues. Like it's just amazing. Conversation's great. There's sometimes, we record, between an hour and a half. We very rarely do we ever hit an hour and a half, maybe about hour 15 is like about the max that we get. And sometimes we talk 40, 45 minutes just BSing before we actually get into it.
Right.
But those are like the best conversations. And then I'll get somebody on and they're just so intimidating that I'm just like I lose like my what the hell am I gonna say?
Right.
Like I'll start and so they're the ones that are like basically like one or two worded answers. And you ask a question and then they just answer it like in 1 or 2 words, and then you're just like, okay. And now you're like thinking in your head, crap. Okay, what do I ask now? It's crazy, bro. Like, or there's been some bigger, like, a lot of the bigger recovery content creators that have, close to 1 million followers and stuff like that. Like, you get intimidated just because of their following count, even though
Yeah.
they're like the best people in the world. They're
Yeah.
great when you get to know them, but you get intimidated, like, man, like these people get like millions of views combined, like all this, that, and then you do this, and then you're just like, sometimes it just works, bro, and then other times I'm just like, shit, like what do I say? Like
Yeah.
what do I say? And I try to be professional when it comes to it.
And making up that dead air is so
The
hard,
dead
man.
arrow. That's I'll tell you this. I will give you a little secret. If there's an episode and there's dead air, and I realize like it's a pattern, I'll go
Yeah.
back and I will edit every single dead air out.
Interesting.
If it's like three, like I will like it's but it makes it just because I'm just like, man, I want this to sound as good as possible. I don't want the
Mm.
listener to be like, well, that's awkward. Oh, here it is
Yeah.
again. That's awkward. I'll go through like if it's like a good like 5 or 6 seconds of dead air, I'll go, all right. I'm just literally chopping every single bit out just because um I, again, we want to look and sound the best that we can. And we're
Right.
doing the best that we can with being a streaming podcast. We get that. You and I know like we don't have the luxury of doing in-person podcasts. I would love to, but that's just
It's so hard to
it's
get that
hard.
set up, man.
And the setup and then the guests and traveling and this, that, and the third.
Yeah.
So we're doing the best we can with this. So now, all right. and we try to do the best to look and sound the best way that we can. And so for me, it's like if I can edit anything out, I don't edit a lot, 100%. And I hardly have any episodes that have dead air. I'm just telling you the two episodes that we did have, I edited all the dead air out
Yeah.
because of that. Because I'm trying to make us look professional. I'm
Yeah,
again
sure.
branding. You know, we want sponsors. We want sponsors to look and go on there and look and be like, okay, cool. Like they're doing good. Like I don't want a sponsor to come on and look and see there's an episode full of dead air because and make it look like we don't know what we're doing.
Right.
So I'm a perfectionist. I try to do everything as
Sure.
perfect as possible. So for me, that's just I'm just working on the image.
Right.
The best, what's the best that I'm just trying to look and sound the best that we can do.
For me, so yesterday I recorded my new intro for my third season, and I think I did like 25, 26 different takes because I didn't like how
Wow.
it sounded, or I would just like skip over a word. It's like shit, I need to redo this. I've
Yeah.
had uh I've had a guest come on multiple times. The first guest was him and another friend. We did like a music podcast. And I'm like, okay, this could be a really good one because we almost all of us can connect on music, right?
Right.
Um, they barely knew each other, so there wasn't chemistry there. They were both my good friends, but they didn't really know each other. So it's just kind of like I was making up for all the dead air that was in the podcast.
Right.
Um, and then I had him on two more times. And I noticed my viewers wouldn't tune into those specific podcasts. And I'm like, okay, so it's either I'm doing something wrong when I interview this person, or, um, you know, he's just not a good guest. And I go back and listen to one or two of them, and it's just kind of like dead air. A lot of responses are just kind of like very generic or just don't go
Mm,
into detail on a lot of stuff. And when I have guests on, I don't expect anything. It's you answer how you want to answer. But like you said, if they give like a 1, 2 word answer, it's just like, bro, you got to
yeah.
work with me here a little
Right.
bit, just a little bit.
And it's not like you can like correct them while like recording. It's not like you could be like, "Can you give me a more full answer?" Like you don't want to do that, you know?
Right, right. And it's just like, bro, come on, man.
Yeah. So that's why, like I said, is as weird as it is, that's why I edit the dead air out because you think though from the viewership size, like if you sit back and if I was to sit back and listen to it, how would I recept it? You know, and I always try to put and I hate I'll tell you, I hate my voice. I absolutely I don't rewatch a lot of what I record. When I try to edit, I try to get through as fast as I can because
Right,
I really don't. When I'll be straight with you, when I am on other people's podcasts, very rarely will I watch the whole thing. Like I'll go through and I'll watch like here and there, but I really won't watch a lot of it because for me, it's just like, wow, wow, I said that or I sound like that. Or I'm just, and so oh, bro. And
right,
that's my biggest thing, telling you the truth. I can't stand it. And
right.
when I'm doing lives, if I'm live by myself, dude, I hate it. I
Yeah,
am like talking to a screen by
yeah.
myself. So if I have other people, I'm great. But lives, I've never been great with like Facebook lives and by myself because of that. It's just I'm like, what do I talk about? You know, I'm
Right.
waiting for people to respond in the comments, and sometimes it could take a few minutes and it's just, oh man. But
Yeah,
then everyone's people
somebody suggested that I started doing these live. I'm like, absolutely not.
you know if you do them with somebody else or you bring other people on, that's the best way to do it. But if you do it by yourself, that can be that it could be the most intimidating thing as it is
Yeah,
because
yeah,
you're just sitting there and you're just like, what do I say? Like, hello, like waiting for
yeah.
people to respond. I'm like, what do I don't get like some of these big people that come on and they're just sitting there just talking away and they're just playing around the computer and doing this and that and we're just waiting. And I'm just like, how do you do that? I can't do that.
Right.
I feel that if I'm
Um,
not talking, they're not interested.
exactly. Exactly. The biggest guest that I had, she had like over almost 1 million followers on TikTok, and she was a mental health advocate. And we were trying for a while to get her on the podcast because she lives in Denmark. So they're like,
Oh
I
well.
believe it's 6 hours behind us or ahead of us. I don't remember, one of the two. Um, and I finally got her on, and I think we had like a solid 2 hour conversation. And Just like the whole time, whenever I first got her on there, I was intimidated as all hell because like she's been at prison, she lives in another country, she's got a massive following, and just like she's got a presence about her, like whenever you talk to her. And when you start breaking down that conversation between me and her, man, she's like one of the chillest people I've ever met in my
Yeah.
life. So it's always cool when you run into people like her because there are so many people in the mental health community that I feel don't contribute as much as I wish they would
Right.
and just do it for attention. But people like her that stand by their message, or people like you that stand by
Yeah.
your recovery journey and the people that you have on and stuff, um, which kind of leads me to a next question. We talked about, the blacklisted subjects of mental health and stuff. What has been a stigma that you yourself has faced on your platform? Like, is there anything specific that you feel you're judged for, or just something that you feel pressured about when you're doing what you're doing?
Yeah. It goes back to the whole kratom situation. I still, I still, here we are, 5.5 years in, or 5 years in. I still use it because that's what works for me. It's no different than somebody that takes Suboxone or somebody that goes to do methadone like that. So I get a lot of shit for that because of
Mm,
that. Like, because again, and it's the people, because I'm very open about it. I don't hide it. I'm very, very, very open. I support all forms of recovery. I support cannabis for recovery. I support, I do. I support all pathways of recovery. And because we support that, and like I take kratom, people are just like, well, you guys are, you guys are being hypocritical because this or this, that, or the third, or blah, blah, blah. I'm just like, no, there's a difference between clean and sober. This is my personal mind. This is my mindset. I'll tell you. Somebody the other day one of my friends posted on Facebook about, people, that people that use any type of mind altering substance but still claim to be sober are not really sober, and they're taking it away from people that are. And there's a difference between clean and sober. So for me, at least, um, I am sober from my vice, which was opiates and fentanyl and all that. I'm sober from that, 100%. But because I take kratom, I don't consider myself clean. I will tell you that. Um, Not to say I'm dirty either, but like I don't consider
right, right.
myself clean though, because I'm still taking some form of a mind altering substance for my recovery. Um, I'm very open about that.
Right.
And so people would so because I say I'm sober, I use the term sober, I get knocked on because of that. And I'm like, yo, never did I ever say that I was 100% abstinent, that I was clean. I ain't never said that. I said I'm sober though. And
Right.
that's the difference between clean and sober for me. That's my personal thing. And that's why a lot of these people that go, like a lot of my friends and stuff, like Quinn Stone, who does he's got the Cali sober movement and stuff like that, like, he's plant-based medicine and like, mushrooms and just like microdosing stuff, like stuff. He's all for that. So his brand is Cali Sober. And so, this dude gets crapped on so much because he smokes weed and he's in recovery. He goes, dude, I'm not claiming that I'm 100% clean. He goes, that's why I have the Cali Sober brand. He goes, I smoke medical marijuana in my recovery, which he's an influencer with 500,000 followers. And, he partners, with other, medical marijuana, recovery certain things, stuff like that, like he's doing the damn thing. And this guy gets so much hate. And then it comes back to like, the same thing with us. And so I don't get it, because then you have a lot of the old timers that are AA and NA when they come on our podcast, not on like to be a guest, but when they listen and they hop on a live and they're like, you guys aren't sober, blah blah blah. And it's just like, dude, like we had somebody the other day. I was a guest on someone else's
Mm,
live the other day, and we were talking about kratom and recovery, like that was the topic. She
right.
had been trying to find somebody who had taken, and she couldn't find people for the longest time. Then she found me. So, and then there's this one guy that was on there. He goes, I feel sorry for you guys. He goes, because she takes Suboxone, so he goes, I feel sorry for you guys that, that you can't be 100% abstinent and this, that, and the third. And I read that comment out loud and I responded to him and I respected him. And I said, with all due respect, Mr. So-and-so, I congratulate you that you are able to have an abstinent recovery.
Right.
I respect that. Congratulations. That doesn't work for me, but congratulations that you could do it. And he still went on talking crap in the comments.
Of course.
And I was like, but it was like, don't feel sorry for us. Like, do not feel sorry for us. I got a good life. I got a really good life. I got a platform, I got a job, I got a house, I got a girl, I got my kids, I got a vehicle. Like, come on. Like, I'm not out there robbing and stealing and shooting and all this other stuff I'm not doing that for kratom. I'm going to the herbal shop that sells it legally. And, and like, that's what I'm doing. I'm not going out there trying to steal and get it off the street. So, and because of so-and-so that uses Suboxone that goes to a clinic and gets it and does what she, but you feel sorry for us because we can't be abstinent.
Right.
Dude, come on.
It always amazes me that there is that gigantic generational gap between guys like you and I and guys like our parents or our grandparents' age of healing. And I feel like I have this conversation at least maybe twice a month about the old generation and how they handled things versus how we handle things. It may have worked for that generation. The stress may have been a whole different animal in that generation, but the stress that we have and the things that we have are not what they went through. Of course, our parents went through what they went through, 70s, 80s, and all that stuff. But we're dealing in a time of social media being at an all-time peak, and it's severely toxic, and they're contributing to that toxicity in the worst possible way. You don't shame somebody who's trying to do better for themselves by saying you're not doing enough. You say, good job, I'm proud of you, and that's it. And I feel their generation has gotten so comfortable being disrespectful to people like yourself that they say, oh, well, I'm an elder, so you're supposed to respect me. No, bro. Respect is earned regardless of what age you are. And it's a mystery to me why they're so comfortable being so disrespectful for people like yourself in recovery.
Yeah. And it's like, at the end of the day, man, like we're out here trying to do good in our lives. We're out here trying to do good in the community. When we have these lives that we do, every Friday night and different things like that, like we're doing this to help other people in the community and help other people that are lost just like we were. The fact that somebody has to go on someone else's platform and just degrade them is just beyond me. Wow. Right. But you feel sorry for me though. Right. And so I was respectful. Nikki's a little spicy. And so she was like, listen, if that's the way you're going to be, get the hell off of here type deal, like literally. And it's just, I'm not that confrontational type of person. So like, I was just like, put my head down or whatever. And she's over there going off. And then the next day he had the audacity to go on to one of my posts on the podcast Facebook and say, like, I can't believe that you reacted the way that you reacted. And then I responded and I was like, with all due respect, as far as I remember, I'm not the one that went off on you. I said, I was respectful to you. I congratulated you. And he goes, yeah, thank you for that. So it was just more of like,
So there is one question that I feel is kind of controversial for people like you and I, but I wanted to get your perspective because I feel I've gotten it from a lot of the women guests that I've gotten, and more specifically the ones who do advocate for men's mental health. Why do you feel that society just as a whole, shuts down the whole thing that men struggle with mental health stuff too? Why do you feel that's a thing?
I think more just because we're men. We're masculine. You know,
Right.
we're supposed to be the fighters and the warriors and the providers and this and that. And that's just what I think. Like, I just think that over the years, like Hollywood, you know, in the movies and all that, like they've portrayed us men as these manly men that are every single one that's like that have zero feelings, you know, these Vin Diesel, Jason Momoa, the Rock type of guys, you know, um that's how every man is supposed to be. And then when every man breaks down or has a mental breakdown, you know, they film it and then they laugh. Like Kanye West, you know, Tyrese Gibson, you know, Will Smith, like all these people who literally, you know, had this breakdown on stage, crying out for help, and they were and the people are just making memes out of it and laughing and all that. And I think it's the way that society's made it over the years, you know, the way Hollywood's made it, the way that, you know, we're just not supposed, as men, we're not supposed to have feelings. We're not supposed to have, yeah, take the mental health aside, just men's rights in general. And when you were on, we talked about, you know, Chloe, you know, Roma Army, who, you know, from Canada, that is a you know, as a men's rights activist. And, you know, and she gets a lot of crap being a woman that is
Oh yeah.
fighting for our rights as men.
Right.
So she's trying to break that stigma on that. And so I don't know how we got here. I don't know how society made it this way, but that's where it is. And we can't, you know, we can't cry, we can't have a problem, we can't have a bad day. We
Yeah.
have been, you know, it's just, you know, you have a bad day and you go to somebody who's old school manly and suck it up.
Right.
Why are
Right.
you crying about it?
Exactly.
And
Kind of
that's
like
just
that
what
guy
we've
that
been taught.
commented on your stuff.
Right. Exactly.
And which kind of leads me to my follow-up question on that is, do you think social media has a positive impact on mental health community, or do you think it's mostly negative?
I mean, I would say it's neutral, to be
Yeah.
honest, like, because there's some great stuff going on social media with the mental health community. And then, of course, there's some crappy stuff going on. And I'm not going to say one's more than the other. I would say it's
Mm.
pretty neutral, in my opinion. It's just, you just got to choose which side you want to be on.
I
But
feel like it's that whole algorithm conversation, right?
yeah, exactly. You know, it goes out into to the algorithm, and the viewer on the other side, it's a 50-50 shot. They're either going
Right.
to love it or they're going to hate it. And that's why I can't sit here and say that I see more of positive or more of negative. It's more of just, but social media has been great for
Yeah.
it, for especially for the stuff that we do. And to be able, you know, all the mental health groups that are out there and the recovery groups and whatnot and all the different platforms that are out there. So I think it's great. I think we just need to keep doing it, keep doing what we're doing. But it's more of not learning to not take the negative criticism, the people that are miserable in their life. It's not taking that to heart and taking it personal. Because you realize we do this, we put ourselves out there in front of thousands of people, we're going to get trolled, we're going to get clowned. Like, that's just the way it is.
Right.
So if you're soft, might not be the best thing for you to do. Just to be honest with you, just being
Right.
honest.
Yeah, I mean that's a fair way of looking at it. I feel social media, again, going back to our earlier conversation of people being too comfortable on disrespecting people.
Yeah.
Um, I know trolling's a thing. It's been a thing since Vine culture has been a thing,
Mm,
and now it's
yeah.
meme culture. Um, I feel that if there's any platform right now that I feel feeds negativity, it's TikTok. I have
Yeah.
found myself doom scrolling. Sometimes I'll run into like the same type of interview, but it's a different person, talking about women just like trashing men or, guys trashing men.
Yeah.
Um, and it's amazing to me that TikTok seems to be the only one out of all of them that just kind of like feeds that negativity on your feed like crazy. And they can say it's the algorithm, but I feel there's more of that trying to get attention for likes kind of thing on TikTok than there is anywhere else.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's kind of like the Wild Wild West on TikTok, you know?
Absolutely. I never been able to really like.
Right.
I'm learning TikTok,
Yeah.
but it's a TikTok's it's whole nother game.
Yeah. And, I've had to have conversations with my therapist about TikTok and telling her some of the videos that I've come across, like Cher saying that men don't matter and stuff. And she's like, those videos are edited and created to do the purpose that we're talking about right now, to upset you, to get reactions. Same with those interviews when you talk about when you have guys going around bars and interviewing quote unquote women about men, saying that men don't matter, we don't care about their
Right.
feelings and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, I have ran into women that feel that way, like personally, but that doesn't reflect the entire, gender of women. And same with the whole conversation of, if a girl gets cheated on, that doesn't reflect the entire male population.
Right.
And I feel it's important for
Yeah.
us. I
No,
feel
I'm
it's
just
important
agreeing.
for, yeah, you're okay. Um, I feel it's important for us to echo that message that, both sides can be a problem. And we need to acknowledge that both sides can be a problem. But at the same time, if we're going to uplift each other, we need to uplift both sides too. Women's mental health doesn't matter more than men's, and men's mental health
Yeah.
doesn't matter more than women. And somewhere in there, we as a society have said that if men's mental health matters, nobody else mental health matters for whatever reason. And that's anything but the truth. If I ever say that men's mental health matters, that's not because I'm trying to downplay what women go through, but women are encouraged to have those conversations. What
Yeah.
happens if somebody like you or I were to go through a breakup or a divorce? Oh, well, you probably did something wrong for her to leave. And
Mm.
then it versus the conversation with the woman. Oh, well, you're a boss bitch and you can upgrade and this and that.
Yep.
And I just wish that the conversation can be equal on both sides, you
Yep.
know?
I agree. And I think that's just where us continuing to fight for men's mental health and mental health in general and whatnot. I think that's just where we just got to keep being vocal about it and keep pushing and just keep putting it out there on social media and whatnot and just start breaking those stigmas.
Right. So at the end of every podcast, I ask this to all my guests, and I'll ask you this as well because you've been have provided some great insight, and I feel like this has been a pretty good conversation. If you could change one thing in the mental health community, just one, what would it be?
Ugh,
It's a hard question, isn't it?
it is. It is. It just be more just accepting that we are not all going to be on the same page when it comes to things. Um, Going back to the very beginning of the conversation of having a different opinion. Um, I if we're doing the same thing, so if we could just all understand and be that we're all humans with the brain that is going to be is we're going to think different.
Right.
So if we have the opportunity to speak, if you can have the opportunity to speak freely on your opinion, then I should be able to without any repercussions. So it's just acceptance. Just people are going to have a difference in opinion. And if we can just love everybody for who they are and for what they believe, I think we could be pretty
Yeah.
strong. We can have a pretty strong group.
I definitely feel like the acceptance conversation is very important because there's not a lot of that in this community for whatever reason. Um, I love that answer, and I appreciate you being on today's podcast very much.
I appreciate it.
Before
Thank
we,
you for having me.
yeah, of course, man. Before we wrap up today's podcast with the weekly quote that I like to provide to our listeners, where can everybody find you on your socials?
Yeah, so we are the Blaklist Podcast. It's BLAKLIST. You can go to the blacklistpodcast.com and it'll take you to our website and all of our socials. Everything's linked: TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. We don't do Twitter. I don't know why. I just don't do Twitter. Um,
I don't blame you.
yeah, but and then YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Pandora, iHeartRadio, like anything, any streaming service is pretty much out there. But I would just say go to the blacklistpodcast.com and that'll take you to everything you need to be.
Cool, man. So I like to read a quote that has to do with the topic of the podcast. Do you have any saying or quote that you live by that you want to share with our listeners today? If not, no worries at all.
Yeah, so I like to it's the last thing I always say at the end of every podcast that I do. And I just like to remind people that no matter what life throws your way, there's always a reason to hold on to hope. And that's
Love
how
that.
I end every single podcast is that you're
So
never
good.
too broke. You're never too broken to be put back together. Um, doesn't matter how many bridges have been burned. There's always hope. So
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing, man. Um, so this podcast being recorded the day before MLK Day, I happened to find an MLK quote that had to do with today's podcast, and you basically sharing your journey with us on this podcast. And it reads, "If you can't fly, run. If you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl. But by all means, keep moving."
yeah,
And I thought that was so powerful because this conversation was about you overcoming the odds and continuing your sobriety journey. So, again, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I feel this is one of my favorite conversations in recent memory for sure.
yeah. No, I appreciate it. Thank you. And again, thank you for coming on mine when you did. And is I appreciate every opportunity that we get to link up and communicate and share our stories with each other.
Definitely, man. And for all our listeners, thank you again so much for listening. As always, be well and be gentle with yourselves. Until next time, guys.